The year was 1940. The world was on the brink, but in the glittering bubble of Hollywood, life was golden, and no star shone brighter than James Maitland Stewart. At the apex of his young, yet already legendary career, Jimmy Stewart was the undisputed darling of American cinema. Just moments earlier, he had secured his first Academy Award for his witty, charming performance in The Philadelphia Story. He had captivated the country as a reluctant hero in Frank Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, becoming the very personification of the ideal American man, decent, honest, just a little shy, and possessed of a profound, innate sense of fairness. He was a superstar of his age, a figure whose popularity seemed unassailable. For most actors, this moment, the Oscar in hand, the studios clamoring for his name, the public hanging on his every word, would be the cue to settle in and savor the limelight. This was the time to choose the next prestige project, secure the future, and cement one's legacy among the Hollywood immortals. Every agent, publicist, and studio executive would have advised him to do just that: stay put, stay safe, and stay on the screen. But Jimmy Stewart was not most men. While the spotlights of Los Angeles illuminated the future of his career, Stewart looked east, across the Atlantic. The lights were going out. Europe was engulfed in the dark shadow of Nazism. Democracy was under threat, and freedom was fighting for its very survival. Though the United States had not yet officially entered the war, it would be over a year before Pearl Harbor. Stewart possessed a clarity of vision and a deep-seated sense of responsibility that defined his generation. It was a call to duty rooted in the small-town values of his Pennsylvania upbringing, values that Hollywood fame had never managed to corrupt. He made a choice that shocked the entertainment industry, confounded his peers, and revealed the true metal of the man beneath the matinee idol exterior. This was not a move calculated for publicity. It was an act of quiet, profound commitment. He was the first major Hollywood star to step forward voluntarily, trading the comfort of the film set for the uncertainty of military barracks. His decision was met with immediate resistance. Studio bosses saw him as a precious asset that should be protected. They argued that his value to the nation was greater on the screen, rallying public morale through inspiring patriotic films. They could offer him a safe, honorific role, perhaps touring the country, selling war bonds, or narrating propaganda reels. They made a compelling case for the continuation of his career. But Stewart refused the easy path. For him, duty was duty, and the idea of asking others to fight while he remained comfortably at home was fundamentally unacceptable to his moral code. That core principle, that integrity mattered more than profit or fame, was the driving force. He felt an intense, inescapable need to be where he believed he belonged, with the young men who were preparing to risk their lives. He was, after all, already 32 years old, an age when many were considered too old for frontline combat. Yet, the same determination that helped him hone his craft as an actor now focused entirely on the call to service. He understood that America's ideals, the very ideals he often championed in Capra's films, were worth fighting for. And for Jimmy Stewart, fighting meant actually fighting. His action was a profound declaration. It was a testament to a bygone era of heroism, one where sacrifice was assumed, not celebrated. Stewart's willingness to walk away from his peak, to put his career, his wealth, and his very life on hold, sent a powerful message across the nation. It said that regardless of status, the responsibility to defend liberty was universal. He exchanged the glamour of the red carpet for the stark green of the uniform. He set aside the comfortable life of a celebrated artist to embrace the rigorous discipline of a soldier. This was more than just enlistment. It was the start of a transformation. The light-hearted Jimmy Stewart who left Hollywood would be replaced by a deeper, more complex man, one forged in the fires of conflict. The experience that awaited him would fundamentally alter his soul, yet ultimately confirm his character as one of the most decent and most quietly courageous Americans of his time. James Stewart had made his choice. He would serve his country. But the path from Hollywood stardom to military service was anything but smooth. For a man celebrated for his effortless charm and honesty, Stewart faced the ultimate bureaucratic irony. He had to fight harder than the average citizen just to be allowed to sacrifice. When he first presented himself for enlistment, the man who looked so commanding on screen was met with a blunt refusal. The official word came back, rejected for being underweight. At 6 feet 3 inches tall, the lanky actor simply didn't meet the physical requirements deemed necessary for service in the United States Army Air Corps. Imagine the scene. The highest paid, most sought-after actor in the world, standing before a stern military doctor, being told he wasn't fit enough. For most, this would have been an easy out, a legitimate, documented reason to return home, accept a non-combat role and silence the critics. He could have fulfilled his patriotic duty in the safety of a studio, claiming that his body simply wouldn't allow for the rigors of combat. But quitting was never an option for James Stewart. That deep-seated sense of integrity and tenacity, qualities that defined the roles he played, kicked in with full force. He was determined to wear that uniform, not as a costume, but as a badge of honor. He saw the rejection not as a final verdict, but as a temporary obstacle to be overcome. His resolve was astonishing. He embarked on a drastic, focused effort to gain weight, and quickly, to meet the Army's physical standards. This effort speaks volumes about his character. It wasn't merely about meeting a number. It was about proving his sincerity. It was a visible, physical manifestation of his unwavering will to commit himself fully to the war effort. He wasn't looking for a shortcut. He was demanding the right to fulfill his duty. He succeeded. He reapplied, meeting the requirements by the narrowest of margins, and finally, he was in, but his celebrity status immediately created the next hurdle. Once enlisted, the military leadership knew exactly what they had: a national treasure, a figure whose face could sell millions in war bonds and inspire countless recruits. The most logical, common-sense decision from a military perspective was to keep him stateside. They offered him safe, non-combat assignments, roles involving instruction, public relations, or making those morale-boosting propaganda films we mentioned earlier. This would protect the invaluable asset that was Jimmy Stewart. And once again, Stewart firmly rejected the special treatment. He viewed his celebrity not as a license for privilege, but as an obstacle to his true purpose. He recognized the profound danger in accepting an easier route. He would become a figurehead, a symbol without substance. He enlisted to be a soldier, an airman, a fighting man, not a mascot. He began an arduous campaign of letter writing and formal requests, repeatedly demanding assignment overseas and placement into dangerous combat missions. This level of insistence, coming from such a public figure, was almost unheard of. He knew the risk. He saw the headlines detailing the harrowing casualty rates for air crews over Europe, but his conscience would not allow him to remain safe while others faced the enemy. Stewart's fight was not with the enemy yet. It was with the bureaucracy trying to save him. He was relentlessly professional, focusing on becoming an exceptionally capable pilot and officer. He wanted to ensure that when his request was finally granted, it would be based on merit, not celebrity. He needed to prove he was a pilot worthy of command, not just a famous face to be protected. His sheer persistence, driven by an inflexible sense of honor, finally prevailed. The Army Air Corps, recognizing his genuine commitment and competence, eventually granted his wish. They saw that the cost of keeping him at home was greater than the risk of sending him to the front, the cost of dampening the spirit of a truly dedicated officer. Jimmy Stewart's struggle to simply be allowed to serve is a powerful illustration of the man's character. In an era where many sought advantage, Stewart actively sought equality as sacrifice. He battled the inertia of fame, the protection of the studio, and the regulations of the military, all to earn the right to put his life on the line. It proved that the man America loved on screen was an even greater man when the cameras were off. He was finally going to war. James Stewart's fight to serve was finally over. The determined young officer, who had been rejected for being too thin and had fought his commanders to bypass non-combat duties, was now granted his deepest wish. He was deployed to England, the crucial staging ground for the brutal air war against Nazi Germany. His assignment was not ceremonial. He was placed in the cockpit of B-24 Liberator, one of the war's vital, yet notoriously difficult heavy bombers. And his mission was stark: to command and fly dangerous bombing runs deep into enemy territory over occupied Europe and the German heartland. This was the sharp end of the war. Daylight bombing raids over Europe were amongst the most perilous operations of World War II. The skies were a deadly gauntlet of lethal German flak, anti-aircraft artillery, and the formidable, aggressive fighters of the Luftwaffe. The casualty rates for B-24 air crews were staggering. It was often said that simply completing your required missions was a triumph of luck and skill. Many simply did not return. Jimmy Stewart, the gentle, stammering screen personality, was now transformed. He was a group operations officer and eventually a squadron commander. This meant he was responsible for far more than just his own life. He had the fate of dozens of young American airmen resting on his shoulders. He had to lead large formations of bombers through intense combat zones, making split-second decisions about course, altitude, and evasion, choices that meant the difference between a successful mission and mass tragedy. He was no longer just Stewart. He was Colonel James Stewart, having earned rapid promotion through merit and experience. He led his men not from a distant headquarters, but from the front lines in the cockpit right alongside them. This commitment was vital. In the high-stress, dangerous world of aerial combat, leadership by example is the only kind that earns true respect. Stewart demonstrated undeniable courage and competence under fire. Imagine the sight for the young crewman, looking over and seeing one of the most recognizable faces in the world, the star of Mr. Smith, calm and focused at the controls of his Liberator, navigating through a cloud of deadly shrapnel. His presence was a powerful, quiet morale booster. It validated their own sacrifices. It proved that a famous man with everything to lose was willing to share their risk and their discomfort. He was there because he believed in the mission, not because he was forced to be. Stewart completed numerous combat missions, well past the tour requirement for many officers. He often volunteered for the most perilous runs. His actions were never about seeking glory. They were about fulfilling his commitment to the men he commanded and the country he served. He earned the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal with oak leaf clusters, not for showing up, but for exceptional heroism and sustained combat performance. The experience was brutal. The famous actor witnessed the very worst realities of war firsthand. He saw the black puffs of flak erupting around his plane. He watched friends and fellow airmen, men he'd trained with, men he'd shared meals with, go down in flames, vanishing into clouds over hostile territory. These were not scenes from a Hollywood script. These were irreversible tragedies that left scars far deeper than any physical wound. This time in the B-24 cockpit was a crucible that forged the rest of his life. The affable, slightly awkward charm of his early career was replaced by a profound seriousness, a deep empathy, and an understanding of the true cost of liberty. He had left Hollywood as a star. He returned as a tested, deeply scarred war veteran and a genuine hero. He had fulfilled his duty with honor, earning the respect of every soldier and officer who served alongside him. The sky had been his stage, and his performance was one of quiet, unwavering bravery. When Brigadier General James Stewart, the rank he was soon to achieve, returned from the European theater, he brought home more than medal citations and a profound respect of his comrades. He carried the heavy, unseen burden of war trauma. He had endured the intense psychological strain of command and the visceral horror of aerial combat, witnessing loss that would haunt any man. The Stewart who stepped back onto American soil was not the same Jimmy who had left Hollywood in 1941. The light-hearted, boy-next-door demeanor had been tempered by fire. It was replaced by a visible, often quiet depth of emotion, a profound seriousness in his eyes that spoke of things he would never articulate. And that was the most telling trait of all, his silence. Stewart made a conscious, deliberate choice to rarely speak publicly about his wartime experiences. For a nation hungry for heroes and stories in front, this was baffling. Most heroes would understandably share their accounts. Stewart chose profound restraint. He didn't write memoirs. He didn't give rousing public speeches about his missions. And he certainly didn't seek to capitalize on his impressive military record for professional gain. This silence was not born of shame, but of a deep, inherent humility and profound sense of reverence for the gravity of the sacrifice. For Stewart, the war was not a matter of personal glory. It was a sacred duty. To parade his service, especially when so many fine young men he knew had perished, would have been an offense to their memory and an act of self-aggrandizement he simply could not stomach. He belonged to a generation that understood true heroism often meant suffering in silence, carrying the burdens with dignity, and prioritizing the memory of the fallen over one's own fame. His refusal to exploit his heroism stands as a powerful moral compass, a stark contrast to the modern age of celebrity. He taught us that true integrity often wears a quiet uniform, but while he remained silent publicly, the war could not be suppressed completely. It flowed, almost inevitably, into his art. After the war, Stewart played characters that were more complex, darker, and emotionally vulnerable. He channeled the raw, intense emotions of his trauma into his acting, transforming from a charming leading man into one of the greatest character actors in cinematic history. No film exemplifies this transformation more than his legendary post-war return, Frank Capra's masterpiece, It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. In the climactic scene on the bridge, where his character, George Bailey, reaches his breaking point, the pain is palpable, overwhelming. Director Frank Capra, who knew Stewart well, later revealed a profound truth about that scene. Capra maintained that the tears streaming down Stewart's cheeks were not simply the brilliant acting of a screen veteran. They were real tears, the deep, pent-up emotional release of the war experiences Stewart never discussed. It was a dam breaking, the raw outpouring of the fear, the grief, and the moral weight he had carried home from the skies over Germany. The screen legend wasn't just playing a desperate man. He was feeling the residue of his own past trauma. This new depth defined his second, and perhaps greater, career act. His collaborations with Alfred Hitchcock, portraying men gripped by anxiety, obsession, and moral ambiguity, showed a vulnerability that the pre-war Stewart could never have authentically delivered. The trauma had unlocked a new dimension of emotional power. James Stewart's deliberate post-war silence was itself a powerful statement. It demonstrated that for him, the immense sacrifice he had made was not a tool for Hollywood promotion, but a sacred personal commitment. He had paid his price, completed his duty, and quietly dedicated the rest of his life to carrying the unseen wounds of a true war hero. The war ended, and James Stewart returned to his life as an actor, delivering some of the most enduring performances in cinema history. But for Stewart, the return to civilian life did not signify the end of his military commitment. His dedication was not a temporary phase dictated by global conflict. It was a permanent part of his identity. He chose to remain highly active in the U.S. Air Force Reserve Corps. This decision underscores the depth of his commitment. He continued to train, participate in exercises, and fulfill his reserve duties long after the cameras were rolling again and the critics were celebrating his post-war successes. This enduring service was not easy. It required carving out time from a demanding, top-tier Hollywood career, a choice that many would find inconvenient, if not impossible. But Stewart's commitment to the Air Force remained unbroken for decades. It was a commitment that culminated with a profound and historic achievement. In 1959, Stewart was promoted to Brigadier General, and then, in 1968, at the age of 60, he officially retired from the Air Force Reserve after 27 years of continuous service. His final rank was Brigadier General. This singular achievement confirmed his status as the highest-ranking Hollywood actor ever to have served in the United States military. This rank and the quarter-century of commitment it represents is the final, powerful testament to the man's dedication. It wasn't a rank purchased with fame. It was a rank earned through relentless dedication, professional competence, and the sheer courage demonstrated under fire. It represents a fulfillment of that young man's desperate fight to gain weight just to be eligible, and his firm insistence on being sent to the front. James Stewart's story is a timeless study in character. His legacy is far greater than his films. It is enshrined in his decision to prioritize service to his country over the unparalleled comfort of his personal life and career. In an industry often defined by ego and self-promotion, Stewart was an anomaly. His fundamental kindness, his innate sense of responsibility, and his remarkable humility remained intact despite achieving the highest levels of global fame. He never allowed the allure of celebrity to corrupt the core values that his parents and his nation instilled in him. He was a hero who didn't need to talk about his heroism. For the generations who watched him on screen, and especially for those who cherish the values of personal sacrifice and duty, James Stewart represents the finest qualities of the American spirit. He proved that the man America loved in his roles was genuinely the man he was off-screen, a patriot who sensed a moral obligation transcended the fleeting value of fame. His choice to risk everything he had earned for the principle of freedom is a legacy that inspires long after the last curtain call. It confirms that for James Stewart, integrity was infinitely more valuable than fame. He was a great actor, yes, but more importantly, he was a great American, a true patriot, and a genuine leader of men. General James Stewart may be gone, but the quiet dignity of his service, the depth of his humility, and the unflinching courage he displayed both in Hollywood and in the perilous skies of Europe will remain a guiding light, a powerful reminder that true character is revealed not in the spotlight, but when one is called upon to make the ultimate sacrifice